Welcome to the Pacific Workers 2024 webinar. In part one of our comprehensive series on workers' compensation, you will learn the basics, understanding what workers' compensation is, how it operates, and determining eligibility. This session is designed to equip you with the essential knowledge needed to navigate workers' comp effectively. Let's begin.
Well, I think we can start with explaining what workers' compensation is.
Perfect.
So, workers' compensation as a system isn't that old. The courts have been around a very long time. You know, back in the day, you used to be able to sue everyone for something called negligence, meaning like if someone breached a duty of care to you, whether it's your employer, your best friend, your parents, a landlord, a business acquaintance, and that breach of duty caused the injury to you, you'd sue them in civil court. And you would get damages for things like lost wages, pain and suffering, all that stuff. The problem with negligence as a theory of law is that you have to prove fault. I can't simply say that you did something and that in and of itself caused me injury and therefore I deserve to receive payment from you. So inherently, there's a problem with that when people get injured at work because people are engaging in activities that aren't voluntary. They're not doing it for fun, right?
Right.
You know, people aren't just spending 80% of their human existence trying to earn a paycheck just because they want to. That's not how it goes, you know. So people are making sacrifices for the benefit of their employer. And sometimes that means giving up their mental and physical well-being. And so to the extent people have those injuries, why should they have to prove fault?
Right.
Why should they have to prove something? Why should they have to establish that their employer did something so wrong, so bad that they deserve to be compensated when they shouldn't have been hurt in the first place because the only reason they got hurt is because they were working for their employer?
Because that business existed. How dare you have a business that injured me? How dare you decide to have a business that hired me?
Well, so that's where the legislature came in. The legislature said, you know what, negotiating, you know, with unions and such, like maybe we should have this system where injured workers don't have to prove fault. They don't have to prove that the employer did something wrong. Just by virtue of the fact that they're an employee and they were injured, they deserve compensation. And so this event was called the Grand Bargain. It was way back when, and basically that created workers' compensation as a system in California. And so in exchange for giving up their right to sue their employers, the benefits delivery system, known as workers' compensation, was created to cover things like medical care and benefits.
Interesting. So it makes sense. It's a benefit that is going to benefit all, whether that's the employer taking care of the fact that they're not going to get sued, they're not going to go bankrupt, and taking care of the employee, someone who's been injured, and it's not looking for someone who's at fault. Like, whose fault was it? It's just a simple accident that happened at work, and there is a system in place. However, it might not be the best system for some of the people, but in essence, it's kind of helping both parties out and just having a ballpark idea of what to do when things like that happen. Now, of course, it happens all the time. There's a lot of people that don't believe they're going to get injured, and next thing you know, accidents happen. That's why they're called accidents. What do you expect, or what are the types of, I guess you can say, coverages, and what entitles you to being able to get workers' compensation? So first, I think it's important to understand and abbreviate what coverage comes with workers' comp.
Without getting into too much detail, just right off the back, I don't want to overwhelm anyone. You know, it's basically financial benefits and medical benefits. That's the large two buckets of ways to establish things. It's things like temporary disability that cover lost wages, permanent disability that's designed to compensate you for functional limitations after you've healed as much as you can from your injury, as well as covered medical care, meaning that the workers' compensation insurance company should be covering your medical needs, not, you know, your own insurance or paying out of pocket.
Makes sense. So it's a simple cookie cutter, right? You get injured at work. While you're getting better from this injury, you're entitled to medical treatment. So anything that has to do with those injuries or that illness you've received, it should get covered by the workers' comp insurance, and it should not come from your pocket. Number two would be any, let's say if you're staying at home, not working, it's supposed to help you temporarily stay on your feet without necessarily being able to work or partially being able to work. It's supposed to pick up the pieces financially for you. And then you're telling me permanent disability, anything that happens to you that you're no longer considered 100% and able to do the things you were supposed to, it's supposed to pick up the pieces for that permanent disability as well after the fact. So looks like a pretty easy system.
Pretty, it's supposed to be straightforward. And really, as you've noticed, I didn't talk about things like pain and suffering or punitive damages. Those are damages that are designed to punish the person you're suing. Those things aren't included in workers' compensation. And I think that goes back to why workers' comp was created in the first place. It was to strike a bargain between what is the employer's liability and what is the injured worker entitled to, and how do we balance those two interests in a way that makes it a sustainable area of law for both sides. And so,
Interesting.
Injured workers' potential damages were limited as opposed to being able to sue in civil court. But,
Right.
They gave that up for things like immediate medical care or lost wages while you're recovering.
Right.
Those aren't things you get when you sue someone in civil court. No one's paying you a check while your case is going on. So.
No. Those are things you have to pay out of pocket. So in how much the law has changed in coming up with this new system of the California workers' compensation system, would you say that was a good bargain? Like not being able to sue someone?
Maybe. In theory, right? Like the whole idea behind it being a quick and efficient system designed to compensate workers, getting them on their feet, getting them the care they need sooner than later. Like that's a beautiful thing. But in practice, because insurance has been involved in it, it's more so moved from let's take care of injured workers to how do we limit costs, meaning how do we as an insurance company take in more in insurance premiums than we pay out in claims in order to maximize our profitability. And so inherently it's become a litigious system where there's a lot of push and pull and fighting over little things.
Right. Tell me a little bit about what the eligibility looks like for someone who's injured at work. How are you eligible to get the California workers' compensation system pay for some of this stuff?
So if you're an employee in California and you were injured on the job, you're good.
Defined an employee, because there's so many types of employees. There's contractors, there is part-time employees,
none of that
seasonal
stuff matters. None of that stuff matters. So it doesn't matter if you were injured on the first hour of your first day at work. If you were an employee and you were injured on the job, you get benefits. Of course, there are exceptions to that, meaning, and we can go into those later about, if you're voluntarily fighting or you were on drugs and that caused your injury, of course, that stuff doesn't count. Those are exceptions to the rule. But generally speaking, the rule is if you're an employee and you're injured, that's it. You get the benefits. Doesn't matter how long or little you were there, whether or not you were seasonal, part-time, or on contract.
Tell me about those that are immigrants here in the United States. Does that apply to them as well?
So yeah, this comes up a lot, both in wage and hour law, employment law, as well as workers' comp law. If you are working in California, you are entitled to the same rights as anyone else. It doesn't matter whether you're here legally, illegally, whether you have a green card, whether you're a citizen, it does not matter. If you are employed here, even if it's under the table in cash because you're legally not allowed to work, you still get workers' comp benefits, and you still get the same protections for employment law, meaning your boss can't abuse you. They can't underpay you under minimum wage. They can't deny you overtime. They can't deny you meal and rest periods. They can't treat you any differently than they would any other person in California. So.
That's great to hear. I'm excited to know that you don't have to accrue some type of hours before you're even entitled to this benefit, as you would for vacation time or personal time off, or even sick days, right? You have to have been working for X amount of period before you're even entitled to that. So you just said it, working the first hour of your job and you just so happen to get injured, know that you're going to get covered. So that's a very important thing to know. Talk about the exclusive remedy principle. Define what that is and why is it in the California workers' comp system?
So the exclusive remedy rule refers to the fact that if you are injured at work, you have no other recovery. You cannot sue your employer. And that was part of the trade-off way back in the grand bargain, was to say, hey, how do we limit exposure for employers if we are going to give the injured workers these benefits, these immediate benefits, this free medical care, this free temporary disability and permanent disability? What do we as employers get? And it was designed in a way that said, okay, well, employers, if you give the injured workers this stuff, you guys are protected from tort liability, meaning the employee cannot sue you in civil court for negligence or other issues.
And that's important because we also don't want to leave all of these employers bankrupt or just in general in court all the time, because then why would anyone even want to have a business? So it makes sense.
Yep.